I just got finished reading this article, which is so good. It basically says everything that I've been saying about the worship of money. I wish I would have been a philosophy major because there is no reason to reinvent the wheel when philosophy already answers most of life's questions. This article is largely based on Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics. There are 10 books in the Nicomachean Ethics, and it describes the ethics that one should follow in order to lead a good life. This article is from the History of Political Economy. It's called On Aristotle's Natural Limit, and the author is Tyler DesRoches. I don't know how to pronounce his name, but I'm going to post the citation in the description. This article explains how living life for the pursuit of excess wealth can actually prevent one from living the good life. So for the philosophy buffs, you know that Socrates came before Aristotle. According to Socrates, wealth is neither essential nor even necessarily helpful in achieving a good life. Socrates preached temperance and frugality and thought that wealth got in the way of virtue. Conversely, Aristotle argued that a moderate amount of wealth was an intrinsic element to pursuing the good life, at least for the male head of a household. According to Aristotle, there is a minimum amount of wealth required to avoid a life of toil. He also believed that there was a maximum amount of wealth one could achieve which would prevent him from experiencing full happiness or the good life. The upper limit to money making is described as Aristotle's natural limit. According to Aristotle, a virtuous master of any household will wisely comply with their natural limit by acquiring and administering a sufficient amount of wealth to satisfy a necessary condition for attaining the good life. Aristotle talks about how a life committed to money making is incompatible with achieving the good life. According to Aristotle, whether something is good or bad is based on whether it fulfills its purpose. According to him, the natural attainment of wealth is when the pursuit of wealth is constrained by the needs of the household. So when the head of the household is pursuing wealth based on the needs of the household, that's considered good. However, the unnatural attainment of wealth is when the pursuit of money or wealth is unlimited and money becomes an end unto itself. So the attainment of wealth is good when it is sought to meet the needs of all household members, including the master, his wife, children, and slaves. He calls this true wealth. However, Aristotle disapproves of obtaining wealth when the purpose of obtaining said wealth is divorced from the ends of household management. The article talks about the purpose of money. It says that in ancient times, household exchanged goods with each other in order to meet their natural needs in a way that was mutually beneficial for all the parties involved. He says that in a bartering system, households were exchanging goods based on their use value as opposed to their exchange value. And there is a huge difference between use value and exchange value. For example, the public pays attorneys $500 an hour for their services. Under a use value bartering system, those same attorneys would have only gotten maybe 5 pounds of meat and a bag of potatoes. But because we're using paper money instead of bartering for goods, attorneys are allowed to attain wealth in a manner that is unnatural. It is exploitive. He says that money making describes actions directed towards the pursuit of unlimited riches. Money making for its own sake is an artificial practice that involves acquiring unlimited riches which extend beyond the true wealth acquired for the purpose of self-sufficiency. Aristotle believed that usury was despicable and unnatural because in usurious loans, money is being used as an instrument of exchange, and then that same money is being used to give an unnatural birth to itself. So the interest accrues and the lender attains more wealth without providing any additional goods or services. So the money is essentially giving an unnatural birth to itself. The money that was lended is replicating itself based on the interest. So Aristotle was against paper money. He says that money does not exist by nature but by law or convention. Usury is a particularly bad kind of unnatural attainment of wealth because money is created to facilitate exchange, which is not mutually beneficial for all parties involved. So these fiat currencies are imposed on us by law. These centralized banking systems are imposed throughout the entire world, and it's not mutually beneficial for all the parties involved. The World Bank set the interest rates. So we have countries in Africa that are wealthy when it comes to natural resources such as gold and silver, which is real wealth, but they're living in poverty based on the exploitative exchange rates. Somehow they're in debt and we're wealthy. So the only thing that paper money is doing is allowing poor countries to become wealthy by siphoning real wealth from third world countries. It says the charging of interest, which involves money begetting money, is unnatural because this activity is not in accordance with the end for which money was originally created. Therefore, Aristotle condemns the charging of interest because it distorts the purpose of money. Aristotle said that retail trade is not a natural part of the art of getting wealth. So all that is happening with retail trade is the corporations are siphoning wealth from those who actually produced it. So although they're getting money, they're not actually producing wealth. Aristotle says that there are several reasons why a human life committed to money making is incompatible with achieving the good life. So the money chaser is really pursuing pleasure. And Aristotle explains the difference between pleasure and living the good life. I'm going to explain that in a minute, but it's not the same thing. According to Aristotle's doctrine of the mean, unnatural wealth getting is a misguided ambition, a vice, not a virtue. He says that excesses reveal defects in character. He also says that the individual who pursues money making as an end in itself risks becoming a slave to the invisible master. So in a Nicomachean ethics, Aristotle talks about goods and virtues. So when he talks about goods, he's not talking about tangible goods. He's talking about things that are good for achieving the good life. He says that action directed towards acquiring unlimited riches can restrict or inhibit the attainment of goods that Aristotle argues are necessary for human flourishing. This includes friendships, agency, and autonomy. A key purpose in acquiring true wealth involves becoming independent or free from the constraints imposed by others and nature. The acquisition of true wealth is partly a means to become self-sufficient. A life devoted to money making beyond the needs of one's household can restrict or crowd out other intrinsically valuable goods and conditions for the good life, including leisure, time, friendship, and freedom from constraint or autonomy. For these reasons, the useless objects of wealth, the ones without a use for the household, that the money maker spends his time acquiring are not benign but can be injurious to the welfare of the person acquiring money. The endless activity of money making can act as an impediment to what might otherwise be a flourishing human life. It says that leisure is necessary both for the private friendships of persons hunting or philosophizing, and also for the friendship of the larger community, that of the city, and leisure is required for the political praxis and excellence, just as it is for the virtues of private friendships. He says friendships are very necessary for living and one of the greatest external goods. Friendships are a necessary condition for a flourishing human life. Now, I've talked before about the three types of friendships. According to Aristotle, it's friendships of utility, pleasure, and virtue. Basically, you can't have a functioning society without friendships, and he's using friendships very loosely. Friendships are your connections and associations with other human beings. So when you're endlessly pursuing money, you become disconnected from society. And we all hear the expression that it's lonely at the top, because once you attain a certain amount of wealth, you never know who your real friends are. You never know who's using you for your money. So what Aristotle said is at least anecdotally true, because we know that the very wealthy appear to be unhappy. Because part of happiness is striving to achieve. Once you reach a certain threshold, attaining more wealth has no meaning. Aristotle stated that the household management is not identical with obtaining wealth. The household uses material which wealth provides. Those who do not rule their households with the purpose in mind of securing the good life may have many possessions, but it is as if they are themselves governed by invisible masters in their quest for more wealth. Actions directed towards endless wealth acquisition represent the desire for an unfairly large share of distributed goods are considered bad, because such actions are a form of excess, avariciousness, and thus a vice. Such a life is unleisured because its demands are never ending, and moreover it is led under constraint. Aristotle states that the life of the moneymaker is a sort that is chosen under a compulsion of need. Not only can unlimited wealth acquisition lead to the loss of the moneymaker's overall freedom, autonomy, and other intrinsically valuable goods that could have been afforded with less wealth, but the moneymaker develops a disposition towards greed. Aristotle believed that the motivation for endless wealth attainment is the fulfillment of bodily pleasures. Pleasure is an intrinsically valuable good, but not at all times and not in all situations. Pleasure is good only when it is the consequence of taking the right kinds of actions in the right circumstances. So, to give the example that I stated earlier, pleasure is not good when it prevents one from displaying courage. Pleasure is not good when it causes one to betray his friends. It says, what distinguishes humans from animals is their capacity for reasoning or deliberation, a function that he attributes to the immaterial human soul. Therefore, the life of mere pleasure for human beings misses the mark for humans, because it fails to demand of humans the full exercise of their practical and theoretical reasoning. Indeed, Aristotle thinks that for humans to pursue the life of pleasure, wrongly conflating it with the good life, is to accept a mindless one that is available to a grazing cattle. There wouldn't be any difference between being born a beast and being born a human being. The individual with character should be wise enough to take the right action and derive pleasure from doing the right thing. Aristotle explains that wisdom is a disposition accompanied by rational prescription and a sphere of human goods relating to actions. Individuals of defective character, especially those who lack self-control or possess a bad character, will display a deficiency or excess with respect to the virtues. So basically, he's saying that being both poor and wealthy are both signs of defective character. The head of the household should obtain enough wealth to provide for his family. If he goes below or above that threshold, his character is defective. According to Aristotle, the good life is complete without qualification and therefore is always desirable in itself and never because of something else. The good life is a blessedly happy and flourishing human being who possesses the human excellences and therefore possesses the right kinds of virtues when it comes to action. Again, the purpose of the Nicomachean ethics is to show how to live a good life. Now, some people call this self-actualization. In terms of having purpose for one's life, money is not an end unto itself. Now, I've explained to y'all before about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Money is going to fulfill some of the biological needs, and it's also going to fulfill the safety needs. But those are deficiency needs, not growth needs. You're never going to grow as a human being or find purpose in your life unless you get beyond those deficiency needs. Once your lower level needs are met, you're supposed to move up to the higher level needs or the growth needs. A life dedicated to attaining wealth is a shallow existence. I want to be comfortable. However, I do not want to become wealthy. If I wanted wealth, it would be to achieve a specific goal. It would not be an end unto itself. I'm going to end by reading a quote from Aristotle. It says, "Commerce unregulated by a vision of the good or virtuous life destroys the character of the citizens."